Welcome to Read Between the Lines, a book podcast. I am your host, Molly Southgate, and today I'm interviewing
Jody Kennedy.
Hi there, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to talk with you. So, can you tell me about your book?
Sure. So I am an accidental creative writer. I started writing a couple years ago during a very difficult time in my life. And while normal people probably would have gotten a therapist, I decided to open an Instagram account as a healthy habit. I just started creative writing just as an outlet to let some of the ick out that I was going through at the time. And Clumsy Beauty is a product basically of that Instagram account. My publisher found me about a year ago and sent me an email and said, "Do you want to write a book?" And I was completely shocked. And yeah, so Clumsy Beauty is a collection of very short poems that speak to the messiness of life and embracing yourself and loving yourself and just trying to make sense of this human mess we're living through every day.
I love that so much. So, I love the term that you use when you say accidental creative writer. And I think that's something that a lot of authors feel, even if it's like you've been doing this your whole life, but it still kind of feels like you stumbled into it in a lot of ways whenever you write. But for you,
Oh,
I want to know
totally.
more about like your background. So when you were a kid and everything, were you interested in it, or was it truly something that kind of sprung out of nowhere?
So it's funny, when I was little, I wrote a ton and I loved writing. And I remember in like second grade, they had us do these short stories and they would put our stories into these tiny books with little plastic bindings and like kind of quote unquote publish them for our little second grade selves. It was so much fun and I loved doing them. And down the line when it came to essay writing and any kind of creative writing, I remember loving that and doing it all the time. And I had 1,000 journals, and I um, had always loved that, and I loved reading too. Um, but then, but then you grow up and life happens, and you go to school and you get a career, and you kind of that creative part of you. I hate to say dies, but like for a lot of us, it dies. So, um, I stopped writing for 20 years and I stopped, mostly reading. I've gotten back into reading, but, there was a whole period of time that was lengthier that I wasn't really reading or writing. And then all of a sudden something happens in your life that kind of just, it's like hitting a wall. We had a terminal illness diagnosis in my immediate family, and I was in an extremely toxic work environment. So it was a bunch of things put together that really hit the brakes on my life. And when it would have been very easy to pick up a bunch of unhealthy habits, I knew that I had to pick up a healthy habit during that time to get me through it, or I would have just continued to be a complete mess. And that is kind of what got me back into writing. So as soon as I opened the Instagram account, I opened the Instagram account to keep myself accountable, because I knew, I was like, okay, if I tell myself I have to write something in this little journal every day, then I'm probably not going to do it. But if I have to go through making it pretty and posting it on the internet, like I'm probably going to, it's a way to stay accountable and other people are looking at it, regardless of if you know them or not. So um, that is kind of how the Instagram account came into it. And, against all odds, people found the account and found the feelings and emotions that I was sharing on there. And I mean, I just couldn't believe that people were relating and people were liking it and people were sharing it. And then, the account grew. And so that's kind of how I completely stumbled back into writing.
I love that so much. That's such an incredible story. And so one thing that I feel like especially with poetry, but with so many different forms of writing, is like this idea of it kind of as solace through these times, and whether that be for the reader or for the author. And for you, I'd love to know more about like how the act of writing and keeping yourself accountable and sharing it, how that was for you.
It was extremely uncomfortable. um, it's very weird letting the, like I think I said this before, letting the ick out of you in a way that's like not private. So actually writing this stuff down and sharing it is a very strange process, but it's therapeutic. And like I was saying earlier, most people tell their therapist this stuff, and I was writing it down and posting it on the internet, which is very strange. And poetry was kind of an accident because I am I'm a rambler. Back in high school, writing creatively and stuff like that. I could write pages and pages and pages of stuff and never quite get to the point. And poetry for me in this scenario was perfect because it forced me to get to the point. But like I couldn't. And Instagram is such a small. You're writing in a box basically. So it forced me to get what I was feeling out across in a very efficient, short way, and that ended up working out really well because I think that people like the nuggets and nibbles that they see online right now, and so it was kind of just this like serendipitous thing that I was like, oh, okay, all of a sudden I'm writing poetry, even though I know people are very protective of what poetry is to them or what they think it is, what they think it like the definition of it. And I know a lot of people I think would maybe say that what I write isn't poetry, but it is what it is. It's little creative nuggets that people can relate to, and if nothing else, just makes you think about things and life, and helps you relate to others in a world that increasingly doesn't feel like we're all connected. This was a big helper in connecting people, I think.
Well, I for one love your poetry, and the official stance of this show is that this absolutely is poetry and is so beautiful. And I feel like poetry is more the act of like making the poem and sharing it and having that connection that you were talking about. I'd love to know though, so you're
Yeah.
saying that there's a lot of kind of discourse about what poetry exactly is. What does it mean to you?
I truly think that it is. I think that it's something that can remove you from your immediate environment, and just make you think. To me, that's what it is. When I read poetry, so you can read a novel and it's a whole story build up. There's different characters. There's this and that, and it takes you a little while to get into it and be transported. With poetry, it's immediate. With at least when I have read poetry, it's in a sentence. You can be in somebody else's mind. You can be somewhere else. You can be in an emotion that you weren't previously in. And I think that the way that poetry transports you is definitely special to me, because that's been this whole journey is literally getting myself out of a mindset and into another through the writing process. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers my my adventure with poetry, at least.
Oh yeah, that's a great definition. I feel like you could line up 30 poets in a room and ask each one of them to come up with one, and everyone would have their own unique way of defining exactly what it means. And I think that's the best part of all of it.
I know.
So to bring it back more and talk about the book, how did you organize this collection?
Okay, so this is not going to be the answer anybody wants to hear, because I am not an organized person, and
You're a
And if
I'm a
you've
writer
read the
too.
book,
I get it.
so this is you know it's unfortunate, but if okay, so during the writing process, there's different feelings and different emotions every hour, every day, every month, over the course of time that I was writing all these poems. There's such a broad there's so many topics. There's we it covers anger, and it covers being unsure, and it covers anxiety, and it covers just all these different topics. And so when I sat down, when I picked out the hundred some poems, my publisher was immediately like, okay, well, this needs to go in sections, can you put it in sections? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I am doing. So I have a, again, here's the answer that nobody wants to hear. I have a brilliant sister-in-law who is um, very creative, very organized. She has done editing. She went to school for that kind of thing. And so I sent her the list, the collection of poems all mixed up. And she was able to sit down, and she has the vision to sit down and group them. And then it came to like working the different themes of them and the order that they should go in. So we kind of tried to clump them into themes that made sense, and then it turned into a progression. So the four different sections were just the progression of what ended up being in my mind like like blooming, basically, is kind of like what the four sections take you through. So that I know that is like the least cool and romantic answer that I probably could have said, but honestly, I cheated, and my sister-in-law helped me.
I think that's a great
So I'm
answer,
sorry.
though. It's great because sometimes, especially with something like poetry that's so raw and so immediate, you kind of need someone else to do things like editing and clumping the collection into the different things, because otherwise it's like looking at all of your like feelings and going, how
It's
do I even begin to sort these?
I swear to you, that is it was it's funny. I remember thinking that exact thing. I I sat down with all the poems, and I was reading them, and I could feel the anxiousness, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, this is not my strong suit." I was like, I can write these haphazardly, but organizing them, and it's like you're your own therapist. So I literally had to have my sister-in-law be my poem therapist to like
Mhm.
tease them out and put them in organized manner. So that's, yes, exactly what you said, that it was totally the thought process. Is I was staring at it like, oh my gosh, I am a crazy person. And then thankfully I had somebody much smarter than me go through and be like, no, you're not crazy. This is just how these fit together.
And you know what? What are editors if not writing therapists? Always like
Oh my
we,
gosh.
yeah.
Yes. 100%. Yes.
So I'd love to know more about the actual writing process behind these poems. Were they kind of stream of consciousness, or did it vary for the different ones? Or were they very much like meticulous? You were keeping notes for days, or how did it work for you?
Oh gosh. Well, in terms of process, again, I'm going to go back to this being like the least glamorous process ever. I thought when I started, I don't, I think we all look at like the journals and stuff like that. It's like, start journaling every day and light a candle and pour a tea and sit by the fire. And it's like not like that. So, I mean, at least for me, it is, these, it is always a time when it is the least convenient that a thought or an idea pops into your head. Like, I could be driving the car, and I'll have to like pull over and be like, if I don't write this in my notes app right now, I'm going to lose it. It's going to be gone. So, um, I am a notes app only gal. And I mean, I wish I could do the journals. I have 1,000 of them, but I never write in them. And again, it's never glamorous. It is when, the feeling strikes you. In the very beginning, when it was more therapy than creative, kind of, it was both, but when it was actually feelings that I was encountering on a daily basis, um, I think it was easier to sit down and just be like, okay, I'm feeling this and this is how it's coming out. And I would start, and I still do this, um, with a phrase. Like sometimes I don't know if anybody else experiences this, but when you're really in a feeling, sometimes you repeat things to yourself. There's like a repeating thing that you're like, just as an example, like, in a very sad place, I would repeat like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad. I think I'm depressed. I think I'm depressed. And that thing repeats in your mind. And then you have to figure out a way to make, you know, uh, and this is just a dumb example, but like I'm depressed. Like you have to switch that into a different phase and then build kind of a poem around it, build some structure around it, to help you better understand it. It's like, well, where is this coming from? This, and what color is it? And what does it taste like? And what does it feel like? So it's really starting with, or sometimes is something maybe that just won't leave your brain, and then it's building a body around that, it's fleshing it out. So and I still do that. I could be like, but and this is a happier time, and where I'm through like the brutal year that I had like 2 years ago. But now it could just be like I might be watching a show or a movie, and somebody might say some might say something in the movie that really catches my attention, and then I'll go off with that phrase or that sentence or that idea, and then kind of just flesh out a poem around that idea. And it might not end up having anything to do with what the person was saying that I was watching, but that's kind of the fun part. It's like an adventure. You just get something stuck in your mind, and then you take it in a different direction.
Yes, totally. So I want to know a little bit more about like this book title. I love it. It's such a vibrant image. Like I love the title of it, but what caused you to want to name that the whole collection that?
So the title is Clumsy Beauty. Poems for Hearing Me, I Love You, and Everything. Clumsy Beauty is a poem that I wrote, and Hearing Me, I Love You, and Everything is also a poem that I wrote. And it was a lot of back and forth between the my publisher and I about what works together. And this was another just totally serendipitous thing that happened, where it was just like, oh, these two things actually like describe the contents of the book like perfectly, and somehow they work together as well. It was very strange. But Clumsy Beauty is it's a poem about kind of diving into your consciousness and unfolding it, and discovering who you are, and blooming. And the idea actually came to a few years ago. I was watching my peony bushes. In our old house we had peony bushes everywhere, and uh, and again, this kind of goes along with what we were just talking about just the writing process. I'm looking at these big bulbous things that come out of the ground literally in no time in spring. And it doesn't even look like they should stand up straight. And it doesn't look like they should be able to function as as a plant, in the ecosystem. And they're huge and they're glorious, and they flop around like crazy, and they're clumsy and they're absolutely beautiful. And I was just like, oh my gosh, peony bushes are like completely like us in the world. Like they're big and gawky, and they move funny, and they bob on the wind, and they're pretty defenseless, but they're beautiful, and it takes them a while to completely unfurl themselves, but when they do, it's a really beautiful thing. So anyway, that was kind of the background to what the poem Clumsy Beauty was. And then it was just I think I had suggested that we use that as the title, and that was it was a winner right off the bat. Everybody thought that Clumsy Beauty was a. It's kind of a mouthful though. Talking about it, it's kind of like you a little bit. I mean, it makes you clumsy almost when you say it. So, but yeah, I think everybody can relate to that in some kind of life way, because it is a clumsy, beautiful life.
Well, I feel like it immediately gives you the feeling of the poetry collection too, which is a big deal because it's very hard to come up with a title. And like even in marketing and stuff, that's something that you kind of are always looking for is like what will actually exemplify what this is. So I think that it does a perfect job of that.
Okay, I'm so happy to hear you say that. That makes me feel really good about it. So thank you for that.
Well, I get the little I get the emails like from the publicist. This is a peek behind the curtain for anyone listening, but I get emails from the publicist, and I saw it in the subject line. I was like, "Ooh, that's a good
Ooh,
title." Like that one stuck
ooh.
out to me in my inbox.
Yes. Okay, that's awesome to hear. I love that.
So, out of all of the poems in the book, which one was the hardest to write?
Oh, which one was the hardest to write? You know what? I don't think it's in I don't think it's in the book, to be honest with you. It's this is going to be another terrible answer. It's actually called I Hate You. um, which we did not include in Clumsy Beauty because it really was just like a very pointed um it's on my Instagram. But yeah, it was a a very tough relationship that I had with somebody, and I was just again in the middle of a very difficult time. And sometimes we try to make everything sugar coated, and we try to make everything flowery. And when you're creative writing, you're trying to make it, beautiful and descriptive and stuff like that. And um, I guess that whole portion, it took me so long to get it out that I was just like, you know what, this isn't working. This isn't how I feel about this. And so I wrote a poem called I Hate You. And it was very short, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't recall all of it right now. But that was part of the process, is like, no, Jody, just get to the point, just say what you mean. And I think that part of it was like, I've tried to dress this up, I've tried to put it in a bow tie, I've tried to dress it up, but I just hate it. Like that's all there was. And it was hard getting to the point where I could just um say what I needed to say. And of course I wasn't saying it to a person, but it was more of an event, I think, that was going on. And I just hated it. And I just hated it. And sometimes that's the beauty of poetry, is that you could just come out and say exactly what you mean. But it's hard to get there. Oh my gosh, it's hard because you try to dress it up, you try to change it, you try to manipulate it so that it's easily digestible or not so rash for somebody that's reading it. And sometimes you just shouldn't do that, and you should just say exactly what you mean. So I guess, very long story short, that was, it was short. It didn't take me long once I actually said what I meant, but the lead up to that was very long and difficult uh, to kind of discover that I really just needed to say what I was going to say.
I think it goes back to what we were saying before about writing as a form of therapy, for sure. And like it's whether you're sitting there with your pen and you're writing out this poem and you have this moment where you realize this is really what I've been trying to say, or you're in a therapist's office or you're reading a poem and it hits you. I think those are so powerful and so hard to get to in like as a person, for sure.
Because we avoid them. I mean, for the most part, as humans, we do a lot of tiptoeing around difficult things. And I love expressing in art because it lets you have that direct road to where you're going, where, in other circumstances, you don't necessarily have that. And you have to be polite, and you have to tiptoe around, and you have to sugarcoat. And so, yeah, this, whether it's photography or painting or writing or whatever it is, it just gives it lets you touch what you need to touch immediately. So
Definitely. So, how has your work? I know that you also have done a lot of work as a greeting card writer. Has that influenced your poetry at all?
So funny. The greeting cards came like way after the writing started. And the greeting cards are I I chose to do greeting cards. Well, first of all, because I feel like I can't get a greeting card anymore that isn't like $10. Like I go to the grocery store and I'm like, why am I spending $11 on this like pop-up castle card that I'm getting? So anyway, it was, and also they never really say what, again, you just said this, they never say what you really wanted to say. So I wrote uh, a series of cards that either I would want to hear or that I would love to tell somebody else, that are just very simple and to the point. Um, but also they came about, and why another reason why I wanted to create them is because the writing and the Instagram account made it so obvious to me how important sharing is. Um, and my best friend Lizzie, I don't know if you'll listen to this, but Lizzie is like an excellent greeting card writer, and she writes these cards to me. There's literally one hanging in my fridge right now. That I mean, I cry every time I get one, and it is like I could be having like the worst morning or the best morning, and still I read what she shares with me, and in written form, in snail mail, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's literally nothing better in the whole world than that feeling. So and I feel the same way with sharing writing online. Just sharing is so important, and telling people how you feel, and just the format of greeting cards is just so romantic and wonderful. So so yeah, but that's been one of the lessons that I've just stumbled over a million times throughout this process. It's just sharing is so important, especially nowadays. So so yeah, that's kind of where the greeting cards came from, and now I'm turning some of those and some poems into mugs. So there's a whole bunch going onto my website right now that they're all new fun things that you can share with people. So
That is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I have just had an excellent time talking with you.
thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
I just have one more question, and that is, what do you have coming up?
Well, I am fleshing out my website right now. There will be several more items on there that you can buy and share with others. I am hoping for another book. I haven't heard on that yet or anything like that. So fingers crossed. I'm still working on my Instagram. That's like almost daily for me. I'm posting still a ton on there. So if you want more recent stuff, you can find me at JK Kennedy Writes on Instagram. So there's always new stuff on there. And then completely unrelated to any of this, we're actually working on a chicken coop right now in my backyard. So that's priority. Chicken coop is priority number one right now. And if it ever stops raining, we'll finish her up and get some chickens in there. So that's currently what we're working on.
Well, that is all fantastic. I can't wait to read the new book once it comes out, the second one that I'm sure will be soon.
I hope.
And you are welcome back on the show anytime. Of course, this is
great. You're the best. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you. For Read Between the Lines, my name is Molly Southgate.
And I'm Jody Kennedy.
Let's end this the way all great stories end. Happily ever after. The end.
Thank you for listening to Read Between the Lines, a book podcast. You can follow the show on Instagram and Facebook at Read Between the Lines Podcast, and on Twitter at RBTL Podcast. Make sure to follow the authors who I've been talking to hear all about their upcoming projects, and also because they're cool people. This show is hosted by me, Molly Southgate, and produced and edited by my dad, Rob Southgate. Read Between the Lines is a Southgate Media Group production, and you can find all the great content put on by the network at southgatemediagroup.com. You can read the story of how I and many other podcasters started in the anthology book Pod Life, which you'll find at the link in the show notes. Also in the show notes are links to buy the books featured on this episode. Using those links supports this show and the incredible authors being interviewed. Have a great week and keep reading.